Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I'm your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or that weight gain around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet nothing seems to be working. In fact, it feels like you're putting in all this effort and you're actually moving backwards. But we know now that your body is inherently different than how it was prior to you experiencing these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life, so you can reach those health and fitness goals, feel at home and control in your body again, live a life full of vitality, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today, I want to talk about spouses and family in your health journey. Because I don't know about you, but I've been there before where, you have this plan. You are going to do the things, you are feeling motivated, you are good to go, and then your partner comes home with pizza. Or they go and get groceries and come back with some chips and some candy, and they're like, well, just because you're doing this doesn't mean I have to do this. And true, but dang, that makes things really hard, right? And then you see those fit couples on social media and they work out together and they chop up their protein in the kitchen together and, they're doing all those weird things on TikTok and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And it just seems like they're always doing all these healthy habits together and just really embracing their health journey. But let's face it, that is not the reality for the majority of us. I want to say that's 80% of the world. That is not anything close to what their life is like, right? So let's be a little bit realistic here. And of course, we all know how absolutely wonderful it is to have someone be joining you on your journey. It makes it a lot easier when you have people kind of on your side and doing the same things, right? It doesn't make you feel like you're so alone, that you have companionship and accountability. It helps with a positive relationship too, right? You can imagine working on your health together, you're probably growing together and feeling good together, and that's connecting you that way, right? But let's face it, not all of us have people in our life that are going to be doing that. Definitely not all partners, and they're not always going to be supportive of what you're doing. They don't want to be involved in the changes that you're making or you want them to do, right, when you are going on your health journey. And our relationship with food and with our bodies is just so intertwined with other areas of our lives, right? We need to acknowledge that it's nearly impossible to make big changes in our health and nutrition, our fitness, and even our body image without it impacting other areas in our lives as well. And that includes the relationships that we're in. So what do we do when one half of the relationship, aka your significant other, doesn't want to support, doesn't want to partake on this journey with us? Or how can we get them to be more involved without ordering them to track everything in their life, right? Because let's face it, that's usually not going to go well. You're met with a lot of resistance, right? And I think the first thing to acknowledge is that change is freaking hard, okay? Sorry, I had to turn my heater down here because my right leg was getting a little toasty here. So I want to break this down into two big parts. One, how can we handle an unsupportive partner or spouse? And two, how can we get them to be a little bit more involved? And I am going to touch a bit on kids here as well, because again, it's tough. It's tough when the home environment has been set up in a way that you've been running things a certain way for a lot of years, right? And now you want to change things, and it does impact other people around you. You have other temptations, right? So it is challenging. So we first need to acknowledge that. So first of all, let's tackle how can I deal with a partner who doesn't want to join me or doesn't support me in my journey? Because unfortunately, a lot of women are in this situation where we chat lots. This happens to our clients too, where their partner wants nothing to do with this. They are not very supportive. They don't care. They're like, this is just another thing that you're doing, again, like they're just very skeptical, and the support isn't there, and that sucks, and it's hard. I've been there. I've been very lucky that like Taylor is super supportive. I could not ask for a better husband that way. But that's not the case for most people. And that wasn't the case in past relationships for me, right? So number one, remember that the health journey is about you. This is about you. Nobody else, just you. And you cannot take responsibility for other people's actions, their choices, their feelings, their decisions. You cannot take responsibility for that. I can do my best to word things in a certain way, right? I can do my best to lead by example. I can do my best to communicate as effectively as possible. But in the end, I have zero control over the decisions they make or other people make, right? I have zero control over their emotions and how they're going to feel. And this is a hard one because for me growing up, I was the protector. I was the caretaker. It was me protecting my mom and my little sister against my dad. And this leaked into all areas of my life, which I think is part of the reason that I do this. But also, it was a really hard thing to come out of because I took on the burden and those negative feelings of like, oh my gosh, I made them upset. Or, oh my gosh, I should have worded things differently. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they reacted that way. It's my fault. And yes, you learn about how to communicate better. Yes, you learn about how to lead by example better. But in the end, you have to let go of what you cannot control. And you cannot control how someone thinks, how someone feels, how someone acts. That is totally on them. That is representative of their past choices, their experience, their self-growth. That has nothing to do with you. And that is the hardest thing to be aware of. But that is something that I do really want to put forth to you all, because you need to realize that that is not your fault. That is not your responsibility. It is not your responsibility to make other people happy, which is crazy and hard to understand because you are then relying on something external that you have no control over to dictate how you feel about yourself. So you have to acknowledge that this journey is about you and you alone, okay? And that is hard. That is really, really hard, okay? And I'm gonna say that a bunch of times, that this is going to be hard, especially if it's not necessarily a change that your partner wants or is on board with or is supportive. Just like when we start to change and it's uncomfortable for our brains to like accept this new reality of what we're doing or what we're trying and changing our mindset around things and potentially eating more food. We need to remember that when we are partaking in major changes, our partner is going to experience some of that change as well, right? They are also going to start feeling uncomfortable with some changes in their regular comfort zone, right? And their routine, whether they like it or not, right? Because maybe their routine is you sit down and have chips every single night before bed, but we know that's going to negatively impact your sleep. We know it's going to have implications for food choices, food quality, weight gain, hormones, all those kinds of things, right? So it might make them uncomfortable that they're sitting there with a bowl of chips, but you're sitting there with some yogurt, right? It might make them uncomfortable that you are prioritizing different things, or maybe you're trying to read and grow and you're learning different things. And that can be challenging for them because sometimes they might feel left behind, or if they start saying things, you need to be aware that that's not a reflection of like you. They're uncomfortable that you're willing to make choices to improve your health that they're not. And that's tough. It's a tough place to be, but you can do it. Remember, this is about you. I'm going to repeat some certain things a lot because I want to hit it home for you because this is so important. Because we see this in women all of the time. We get some that have great partners who are excited, like, you're doing this for you. If this was something that you were investing your time and money in for our kids, you wouldn't think twice. So why are you not doing this for yourself? Like, it's awesome to see like supportive partners. However, that's not typically the case. So that's tough. And like, even if they say they want to see you more happy, more healthy, more confident, that doesn't take away from the intimidation that their ego is probably facing when those changes do start to happen, right? Especially if they aren't super hell-bent on partaking in every aspect of the change with you. So for example, it might be uncomfortable and like confronting them with that you now choose to go for a walk instead of watch 3 episodes of Grey's Anatomy on the couch, right? Even though they know the walk is best for you and your well-being and your happiness, it also isn't the norm. So when something is out of the norm, it feels unsafe, uncertain, and it can make them sometimes feel insecure as well, right? So understanding this will help you feel less like resentment towards your partner when your partner is a bit resistant to your new journey, because you have to think you've been thinking about making these changes for a while. You've been listening to things, you've been reading things, you've been like toying with the idea of stuff, and your partner hasn't had that lead up and like been ready for change. To them, it's like, man, you just decided overnight, which like it isn't, right? That's not the reality of the situation. This might be something you've been thinking about for 6 months. So again, just like try and give a little bit of grace, communicate a little bit more. And like, I think that's a really big part of things, but like acknowledge that like, this is about you. It's still going to impact them. And while you like, that's not your responsibility, talking a little bit about it can be really helpful. The next one is leading by example. This is always the best thing, right? Have you ever had that friend or a partner that has pushed you to do things that you didn't really want to do just because they were doing it? You can be that person too, even though it's a positive thing, right? So just like someone might convince you to like, I don't know, go drinking when you know that you shouldn't, or stay up later and then you regret it the next day because now you're tired and dealing with all these things, right? Just because like what you're pushing them to do is a positive thing for their health, it's still the same thing. They don't want to do it, right? So this is where leading by example can really help the people around you. And they can see that it helps you take control of your health and your happiness. And eventually it can really inspire people to want to do that same thing. This goes far beyond partnerships. You can be that healthy person in your work group or your friend group, right? Whether or not people tease you for not following the status quo of like, oh, I'm just gonna have water instead of a drink, like Coach Cariana. We always bug her at nighttime when we go out for dinner at like conferences and stuff like that. She will always have hot water with lemon, always. And I just think it's so cute, but it's not what people typically do, but she's doing it because it's good for her health, great for digestion. Like it's good. So like, it's okay to not do what everybody else is doing, right? That's where big change and growth happens. It doesn't come from doing what everybody else is doing. Like, you have to realize that. And just know that at least 50% of the people who are like saying something or aren't following along but are there, they're probably actually inspired by you. And they admire your tenacity and the choices that you're making. And they wish that they could do those things to make themselves feel better, but they're just not there yet. And that's okay. And you just keep leading by example. I can't tell you how many women that we work with have told me that they started like meal prepping with their kids and cooking with their kids, and they talk about nutrition and they've been focusing on being more present at meals. And, you know, like then their partner kicks in. Like I always love telling this story of a woman that is in our program, and she started doing this. And then her son was getting ready for college, and he was wanting to like get healthy and stuff. So then he like learned all these things and reverse dieted and lost weight way quicker. Cause obviously you can imagine a 19-year-old boy with their hormones and stuff, they typically respond a lot quicker. So that can be annoying sometimes, right? But it was something they ended up doing together. They ended up meal prepping together and like food planning together. And if he started like seeing like fluctuations on the scale or something, they like sat down together like, hey, let's look back and see what it was. Oh, your fiber fluctuated. Awesome. We know how to fix this. Like it became something they were learning together, which was amazing. And now he gets to carry that on into college. He knows all these things that work. He has the education behind it now, and he doesn't have to worry about like being negatively influenced by other people because he knows stuff now. He's had the experience and he feels good. And now her husband's going into that, and he's starting to see improvements in his sleep and his energy just by like starting to like just touch on things a little bit here and there, not like totally fully submersed, but like No, it starts with like making a few little changes and then noticing they feel better. But I mean, that was like a year in the making. So that's awesome. Like leading by example, I don't think you realize how big an impact it has on the people around you. And you do become the average of the people you spend the most time with. And hopefully a lot of that is your family and your coworkers, right? So if you can lead by example in these areas, people will follow suit. Like the whole feet up on the wall, people send me pictures of them doing it with people in their office to try and like bring their cortisol levels down and improve digestion on their breaks. And I think that's amazing. Like if you do these things, it is amazing. People will get curious. And if they see you like starting to feel better and they notice changes in your mood, like that will make them interested in it as well, right? The next thing is, do not push people to change if they are not ready for it. This never works. Does not matter what age you are. This isn't just something that happens when you tell your teenagers to do one thing and they do the other, right? Just because you are ready to change does not mean they are. Remember how I talked about you've been thinking about this for a while? This is probably not even on their radar. They have to be in a place where they're actually ready to take control of their health. Okay? While it may not feel great that they're not as gung-ho as you, or you can see that they need it, and you want them to be, we have to accept that they're probably not ready and you can't make them ready. That's not how this works. This is why, like, even when we're on consultation calls and stuff, we don't even mention coaching unless people ask us about coaching. Because if you're not ready to talk about that, I don't want to talk about that. This has to be completely on your terms. Nobody else's. This is about you. That's it. And a lot of the resistance that we might face from our partners typically comes from them feeling like we're going to point out their bad behaviors and be like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, and like make them feel poorly about themselves, or their shortcomings, the choices that they make. And even if they logically know that I don't think my partner is like trying to attack me, it can trigger them, right? Like it absolutely can. And like it can bring up some really like deep insecurities that maybe you weren't aware of. So remember that you're sharing your journey and just like sharing it. That's it. Ask them to do things from you from time to time. Like, hey, do you want to come for a walk with me? Like I've been really enjoying it. It's a great way to clear my head. I'd love to use this time to like spend time with you. Just little things like that can be great. Or, hey, do you want to like help me plan out my meals for the week? Hey, do you want to help me cook some things? Like, and if they say no, that's fine, but still invite them. Like, eventually they're probably going to say yes. Like, think of things with your kids where like you ask them things if they want to do this, that, and eventually like they'll say yes. Like they'll get there when they're ready, and that's okay. Like, just keep sharing what you're doing. Offer them opportunities to join you in different capacities without being like all in. Just baby steps. Lead by example. The next one is to let go of expectations. This is a big one. I think this is probably one of the conversations I have with people the most, is when we are struggling with like any feelings of like animosity or anxiety, or, you know, we're feeling poorly, or like so many like negative type emotions. A lot of it has to do with the expectations that we have. We expect what our journey is going to look like. What, like for example, for myself, for motherhood, oh my goodness, I have completely let go of expectations. I have so many people that want to share, like, they're like, oh, my like birth story was so blissful. It was the best experience. Like the first 2 weeks have been so amazing. And for me, I'm like, cool. I want to know the horror stories. Like if you had something traumatic, if you had plan A and then plan B and C and D, and then eventually it was like plan M, that was the way that things went. I want to know those things because I love knowing what are all the things that could potentially go wrong. What are all the different ways that this could look? Because to me, that gives me comfort in knowing that there is not one way that this can happen. There is not one way to do things, to experience things. Like I have people who are like so overjoyed and blissful, like this is the best day of my life. And then I have friends who were like, I got home and I looked at my husband and I was like, are you happy? And he was like, oh, this is the best day of my life. And my friend was like, I don't feel that. I don't feel that at all. And then she like had a hard time because she was expecting this big blissful moment, right? Of like, so like, oh my gosh, I'm so in love. And she's like, yeah, I love my kid. She's like, but it wasn't this thing that everyone always talks about. So then you feel more poorly because you're not feeling that thing or experiencing that thing, when we really have to realize that this looks so different for everyone. Like the way your journey unfolds and the roadblocks that you hit and the obstacles that you have to overcome and the curveballs that life throws you, like we need to be okay with the fact that sure, we have like a plan A, but really what it ends up looking like is like, oh, plan A, oh, now we got to veer to plan B. Oh, now we can go back a bit to plan A. Now, oh, we got to veer off to plan C. Like you have to realize that things are going to ebb and flow and change. As soon as we get attached to what exactly our journey is going to look like, that's when you start having all these negative thoughts, right? So this is the same when it comes to how we expect our partner to be involved. Let go of that expectation that your partner is responsible for making you stick to things, or that they have to be involved in everything. Should they support your journey? Absolutely. That would be ideal, right? Like that if you're working to better yourself and your health, your partner should probably be supportive, right? But they are not responsible for your willpower or for your habit building or being there for accountability. Remember, you are doing this for you. And if there's extra support, amazing. But that's not the case for most people, okay? You need to learn to fill up your own cup and don't expect others to pour into it. And this is hard. This is really hard where like, because we're typically types of people, like especially women, that we feel responsible for how other people feel. Right? So then therefore we think that about ourselves. So we think others should be responsible for how we feel. And that may not totally click in our brains, but if we're expecting that of like how we expect ourselves to be responsible for other people's feelings, you're probably expecting that other people should feel the same. And the truth is, most people are not. And it's not that they don't care, but they know that this isn't about them. And it's hard for us to acknowledge that sometimes. So remember, you are doing this for you. If they're there to support you, awesome, but you cannot be reliant on them. You know, they should not be the reason that you are successful or not successful. This has all to do with you and your choices and your reactions and your planning, your preparation, your doing the things. And if they're there to make things easier, amazing. That's a great experience for you. But to expect them to play a very pivotal role in order for you to be successful, nope, that doesn't work that way. That's like when you're running a company, right? You want your team, your staff, your employees to all care as much as you, to do things as hard as you would. But the reality is you can't expect that. There's like minimum requirements you expect them to meet, right? But they might not go above and beyond. And you can't expect that, right? So it's important to be able to remove yourself from that a little bit. The next one is hard. Oh, this is probably one of the hardest ones, you guys. Take responsibility for yourself. And you're like, Steph, I do. Okay, listen to me here. There are many, 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 many factors to this, okay? The first thing is to differentiate your responsibility with their responsibility. It is your responsibility to take control of your health and not anyone else's. Your choices, your reactions, your emotions. You are in charge and control of that. You cannot control that for anyone else. Okay? It is not your responsibility to make other people take a journey that they may or may not be ready for, and that is okay. That is not something you can control. So you are not responsible for that. You are responsible for you and you alone. Like you can nurture your child, you can take care of them and feed them all the things, but like eventually they're going to be making choices on their own. And you need to learn to let go of that. And this is exactly just like that. It's also incredibly important to take responsibility for your actions around your partner. So what does that mean? If your partner snacks after dinner and you find yourself influenced by them to snack more too, make sure you take responsibility for taking that action. Okay? That is not their fault. Is it something that you have to learn to deal with and how to navigate? Yes, but that is not their fault. You need to take responsibility for the choices that you make. No one is force feeding you. You are making these decisions. And that's a tough one because it's very easy to want to put quote unquote blame externally. As soon as you do that, you'll never be successful. You have all the power, all the choices, all the autonomy within yourself to make this happen, and you need to take responsibility for every choice and action you make. Until you do that, it will be very hard, if possible at all. I'm going to be honest. Okay? So you need to make sure to take responsibility from, okay, maybe you're removing yourself from that environment. Maybe you're putting up tangible barriers to make things that you don't want to do anymore. So maybe it's brushing your teeth, so that way you're not likely to have a snack. Or maybe it's making sure you have an alternative instead of having that, right? Maybe you're going to bed. Maybe you're reading. Maybe you're doing relaxation exercises instead to help you wind down instead of grabbing for those chips. There are lots of options, but you have to be willing to make those choices. So no one is force feeding you here. These are choices you need to make. And is it tough in the moment? Absolutely. But until you take responsibility for those choices, how are you going to change them? Right? That's like being like, oh, I lost because of this in a race or that in a race, when really, maybe you just didn't train hard enough. Right? You didn't put in the work and develop the muscles and the speed and eat the nutrition properly to run faster than the other people. Maybe that's it. Right? Like, if your child loses a sports game, do you point blame to everyone else as to why they were not successful? No, you focus on the things that they can control. Because otherwise we're just enabling them to never take responsibility of things. And that doesn't translate well to an adult, right? So it's the same thing here. You need to take responsibility for all the choices you make. And sometimes they may not be the best thing, but you decided that having that cocktail at dinner to bond with friends was more important than your health right now. And that is fine. I'm not saying that's wrong, but you need to take responsibility for the choices and the consequences that come with it. That's it. Like, I don't care what choice you make, right? Like, that is completely up to you. I will give you all the information, and you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink, kind of thing. I can lay it all out for you. But if you choose to make a different decision, that's on you and nobody else. And I can help you figure out, like, how can we navigate this differently? What triggered you? How can we avoid it? If the situation comes up, how are we going to navigate it next time? But like, you need to take responsibility that those choices come with consequences that you have to accept and take responsibility for. The next thing is to put yourself in their shoes. This is an interesting one, but what can we learn from our partner's behavior around our health journey? A lot of the time, resistance is a bit of a disguise for insecurity or fear. So your partner might actually feel insecure or frightened about your health journey and what it might do to your relationship or your family home life, the routine. They might feel confronted with their own lack of action about their own health and feel poorly about that, but that's not your job to fix. That is not your responsibility. Understanding, however, as to why they're feeling these ways can really help us be a little bit more patient and be more compassionate and less emotional when they're not as interested in what we're doing, right? Or they're not as supportive. So are there comments coming from insecurity or fear? That's something to ask yourself. Are there actions coming from insecurity and fear? Ask yourself that. If you can understand that aspect of things, that can be really helpful. That is one of the key things about communication is like, Why is somebody acting like this? Does it have to do with me? Usually not. Someone is reacting because of something internally. There might be a trigger externally, but that's because caused by something internally that causes them to react to that. So what is that thing that they're insecure about, that they're afraid about, that they're nervous about, uncertain? If you can figure that out, it just makes it so much less combative. There's more compassion and empathy. It provides you with the opportunity to connect and communicate, bring your guys' relationship closer. And that's huge. The next one is find other support systems. So whether you can get your partner on board or not, doesn't mean that you can't develop communities elsewhere. For a lot of women, their spouse isn't the reason that they're still going strong. It's their community, wherever they find that. So whether that's an external accountability with a coach, maybe it's a community of group of women with the same goals, like our Facebook group, for example, or maybe it's like a gym class that you go to, or a mom's walking group, or whatever that might be. Maybe it's a church group. I don't know. But it could be like a workout buddy. Even your kids can be an external support system. It doesn't have to be just your partner, and your partner doesn't have to be involved, to be honest. And on the note of kids, getting your kids involved is such a wonderful way to get them excited about different foods and be able to teach them about quality nutrition. It gives you an opportunity to share your journey with them. And this can look like grocery shopping with kids and letting them make some of the decisions. What are the fruit we're going to have this week? Let's pick something different. Last week we had bananas and strawberries. Let's pick something different this week. And that can get them more involved, and they're excited and like picking out ingredients or helping them prep and cook food. Like one of my best friends has like a little stool with her son. He helps cook all of the time. Like he loves it, but it's something they did from a very young age. Helping them like determine their bedtime snack and like what that looks like in terms of making sure there's protein in it, right? So getting your kids involved is important. And I know we have a very big split between women who are in perimenopause with younger kids. And then we have people who have teenagers or kids that are out of the house. But like getting them involved with stuff regardless can be really, really helpful. And like, it's such a great opportunity to bond and learn together and really help them set themselves up for healthy success as well. And I know a lot of women get nervous with like, oh, I don't want my kids to see me tracking. One of my favorite lines is, I'm tracking my food to make sure I'm getting enough food in. I'm tracking food to make sure I get enough food so I can build muscle, to have enough energy, to be able to work out, to not be as grouchy, If you can turn it into that kind of narrative as opposed to, oh, mom's trying to lose weight, like that can make a huge difference. To have a good, healthy relationship with what tracking food looks like and the purpose behind it, that's huge. And like that will help your daughters immensely, especially with like social media and the crazy go, go, go culture. Cause like you've seen what it's done to you and it's just getting worse, right? Like predominantly it came from like TV and magazines. Now it's so accessible on their phones. So being able to, have an impact that way and like be that person, that first positive influence on them, that's huge. And like, if you start leading by example, like that can make a huge difference, a huge, huge difference. So now, while some of us might not have a resistant partner, we also might have partners that want to get involved or they want to support you, which is exciting, but they don't really know how, right? So what are some things that we can actively do to involve our partners more in our health journey, whether they do or do not want to actually be involved? Here are some things that you can do that can be really helpful and honestly bring you closer together. The more Taylor and I talk about any goals that we have or our struggles or, oh, I think this is coming from like this insecurity, like we ask each other, like, is this like, do you think any of those actions come from like where in your past is this coming from? Like, where is this narrative coming from? And like, we talk about this stuff a lot in terms of like business and relationships and communication and like the way we approach work and family and friends and all these different things, or like what we thought life would be like, right? Talking about like where those notions first come up. Like today, for example, we were talking about how like, he's like, man, I have a really hard time like We've been enjoying slower mornings because we know once baby comes, this is not going to be the case anymore, right? But like, it's been relaxed mornings where like we wake up, read for a bit. I might hop on a meeting or something, and then like we'll podcast in our bathroom together. It's Taylor's Toilet Talks if you want to go check it out. But our mornings are more slow. Whereas like this time last year, it's like we woke up 6:30, out of bed, working right away. He was going and feeding animals right away. And now it's like, we're not rushing through things. And I'm enjoying it because I know I need my recovery because growing a kid is hard. And like enjoying this season of maybe a little bit slower. Like there's still a lot of work to be done and I work crazy hours, but like enjoying these slower mornings because I know we're not going to have probably a lot of them left. And he was like feeling kind of guilty about it. And I was like, hey, where is this coming from? Like, and he's like, well, I think it's coming from like these podcasts I'm listening to of like these really high achievers like Lewis Howes and Ed Milet and Taylor Welch and all these people who are like, get up, go, get a bunch of stuff done, like crush things out, wake up at 6 and it's like 4 hours of crazy productivity. And I'm okay, well, what would productivity look like for you? Because for them, the reason that they do that is because they have so many meetings in the afternoon. So like, where is this expectation coming from that having a slow morning is quote unquote bad? Or he kept using the word lazy. And I'm like, I wouldn't use the word lazy. I would say it's recovery, enjoyment. Like you don't have to rush. Like you're putting these expectations on yourself. So we talked about a little bit about these things and like where it was coming from and our past and things like that. And you can do these kinds of things with your health and fitness journey too. And communication is huge. So like communicate your needs and like request support. This is an important thing. If you don't tell them, how do they know? That's like hiring a coach and like you're struggling with something, and then you tell us a month later. And it's like, well, I didn't know you were struggling with this because you've never indicated this to me. You need to communicate. It's really important. A lot of spouses communicate through food, which can feel really sabotaging when your partner brings back your favorite treats, right? And you've already hit your calorie budget for the day, or like you didn't allot for it, right? You didn't plan for it. So it's important to ensure that you're expressing your needs clearly with your partner so that they understand what you actually need from them. Whether they're listening to you or not, that's not your responsibility, right? But communicating what you need clearly is. Like you can't just assume that they know stuff. Whenever you assume anything, that's where things go wrong. So like I always like clarify with people when I'm emailing or chatting. It's like, okay, I don't want to assume anything. So like, is this what you mean by this? Like when we're having conversations with people, we say that a lot because I want to make sure that I am like understanding what you're saying clearly. Like, am I processing what you were trying to get across? Because sometimes that doesn't match up, right? So you need to tell your partner, hey, I know that like when I'm having a bad day, you usually do this. I'm really working on this. So if I'm having a harder day, I'd actually appreciate if you just like did dishes instead. Like just something like that. And they'll be like, oh, okay. Like if you never tell them, how are they supposed to know? Right? In that same breath, it is important to sit down with your partner to let them know what your plan is with a health journey as well. So just like we said before, I don't think a lot of us really realize that changes to our health and our routine really do make impacts on our partner's lives and our family's lives, right? Especially like lifestyle wise, there can be some pretty big changes. So make sure that your partner is aware of what changes you're planning to make and why can make it less intimidating and like shocking when you start saying no to certain things, or that you bring up, want to start doing things and they're like, where is this coming from? Like if you just sit down and talk about like, hey, I'm really working on my stress management. I need to make sure that I'm eating enough food. I'm focusing on this. These are like 2 lifestyle things that I think would really impact my health, both physically, mentally, hormonally. So this is something I really want to prioritize. So I didn't want to like make you feel any type of way if I start doing this or saying no to certain things, because this is what I really want to prioritize. If you tell them that, they're probably gonna be way more understanding than when you say no for the first time to like a beer and they're like, what? What is like, you know what I mean? It's less shocking. They can understand the why. And having these conversations before there's emotion involved, those conversations go way better. Because when people are emotional, we're not we're actually not using all of our brain. I'm not going to go into it. I've been reading a lot of like brain development books lately. I'm not going to go into like the science of it, but like when someone's like in a very emotional type state, like you're not listening. Like think about it when someone's like, when you were a kid and someone was yelling at you, like you're not really processing what they're saying. You're just like, oh, I'm in trouble. Oh, I'm upset. Oh, I feel bad. Like you're not really quote unquote listening or taking in what the person is saying. So like take time to talk about these things when you guys aren't in that emotional state. The next one is to educate. A lot of people do not understand what they do not understand. Okay. For some, the more you can explain to your partner why you're doing what you're doing or sharing the things that you are learning, the more they can understand and even learn from you. And then it makes it easier to support you as well. Changes won't feel so foreign or scary or weird really, when they start understanding why you're doing them, like why they're beneficial. Plus, teaching others helps you understand and learn and remember things so much better. So talk about it. Be like, today I learned this. So wild. Like I learned I was tired because I wasn't having carbs and I had carbs at lunchtime and now I feel great. Isn't that so crazy? Or, oh my gosh, I have been doing feet up in the afternoon and it's been really helping with digestion. Like I think I'm going to try and do this in the evenings too. Like if your tummy's bugging you, like you should try and do that too. That'd be amazing. Like do that. It helps. This also goes with communicating like how things make you feel. One of our clients got her husband to eat breakfast outside and do morning movement with her because he saw and heard how great she was feeling from it. So, like if you're discovering things and feeling different and enjoying something, share that, because if they want to get involved but they don't know how, that's a really easy way, right? Next one is set goals together. Sit down and talk about what you both want, especially like out of the next 3 to 6 months. Sometimes we just go about our lives, right? Completely on autopilot. And this can give you both a chance to like slow down, come back together, be aware of the other person's goals. And this will not only help motivate your partner to look into the future, but it can also help them understand what you want out of the next 6 to 12 months. And they might even be more accepting of changes or like supportive of habit development if they see like some bigger picture stuff too. Like, what do you want out of the next 6 months? Like, what are you working towards? What do you want to feel? What do you want to do together? Like, those kinds of things can help so much. And setting small goals together, like weekly gratitude goals or weekly habit goals, can be fun and help you both stay on track. For example, set a goal to read together for 20 minutes on the weekend, or set a mutual step goal that you both have to achieve by the end of the day, whatever that looks like. Like for myself, Taylor and I, we sit down, we're Christian, so we go to church on Sundays, and we have a marriage journal, which we love. But it's a great way for us to really touch base, especially if like we haven't had a busy week or we have a busy week coming up, and ask questions like, what was hard this past week? What was great this past week? What does this next week look like? Like look through your schedule. Like, are you really busy? How can I support you this week? How can I pray for you this week? And a couple other questions like that. And it really helps us like get in the mindset of, okay, what are our goals? What do we need to accomplish? How can we support each other? Because like sometimes I have a busy week, sometimes he has a busy week. This is also how we plan our meals for the week as well, because we sit down and we're like, okay, so I'm really like, for example, tonight, Taylor has a flag football game. So obviously he's not going to cook supper. So that's going to be on me, or we have leftovers that we like purposely made lots of the night before so that we would have food for today. So it just helps you kind of tame the chaos a bit and come back to center and like understand what each other's goals are, what you need help with, how can I help you, those kinds of things. And it's really great, honestly. It's been something that we look forward to and we take it with us like everywhere we go when we travel. So that little journal has been with us everywhere. But it's great. The next one is create quality time through healthy habits. So whether that's now going for a walk instead of crashing on the couch after dinner, or maybe you're cooking dinner together, or you're meal prepping on Sundays, ask your partner to get more involved in your journey through the fun things that you can think of that can help you feel more connected through like some more quality time, which there's such a crazy stat, something like families spend like 40 minutes a day together or something, like, which is crazy. So quality time becomes really important. And this doesn't mean you have to go to the gym together and do everything together, but finding aspects of like your health journey that are going to benefit both of you, like health wise and connection wise, can be amazing. Maybe make a date night where you're cooking at home, or maybe you're going for an active date instead of going for like a regular dinner date, right? So maybe you're going for a hike or trying out a new fitness class or just going for a walk, whatever that looks like, you know? And lastly, celebrate the small wins. Every single win. Don't expect your partner to go all in with you. Just like your own journey where we encourage you to celebrate all the small wins, do the same thing with your partner and your family. Recognizing that one night last week they were willing to take a walk with you or cooked veggies with breakfast or whatever that might be, acknowledge those things. And I think that's really huge. We need to show like appreciation for those things because, you know, like let's say your partner, I remember listening to this on a sermon by Craig Groeschel, and he said like, he used to send his he'll send his wife flowers. And the first time he sent it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Thank you so much. This is so great. But then if you do that every day or every single Monday of the week, like every Monday, then the novelty wears off and they're like, oh, like they stop thanking you, right? And then it makes them not want to do it anymore. So it's like, if you show the appreciation and point out those small things, like that goes a long way. Like, I always tell Taylor how much I appreciate that he does the dishes and he does the cleaning and he's been doing so much of the cooking because work has just been really crazy for me. And like, I genuinely really appreciate it. It makes life for me easier. It ensures that I'm still getting like my food in. And like, we always joke about how much he's learned through nutrition just through listening to my podcast, and because he listens to every episode, which is so supportive. But like, I remember the first meal he made for me, and like we always joke about this. It was white pasta with like a tomato sauce and then a salad on the side. There was not an ounce of protein on that plate. But I didn't say anything because I was like, thank you so much for making me supper. Like, I really appreciate this. And then like he learned slowly as like, you know, we cooked together, and then I was like, okay, let's make sure there's like more protein here. And he'd be like, oh, why? And like we chat about it. And like now he's very good for like making sure there's protein and there's carbs and there's veggies. But like, it's so funny. And like we point that out how like, you know, like I helped teach him and we would like cook together and meal plan together. And, you know, we meal plan like, okay, like what do you want to have for a vegetable, or what do you want to have for a protein, or things like that. And so like he's grown a lot nutritionally, which has been awesome. But like if I would have been gung-ho, like, oh, this is not a good meal, you're missing this, you're missing that, and just criticizing, that wouldn't have gone well. And instead it's like we learned by like doing things together and leading by example and sharing these things. And it's been great. And I think, I mean, it took a long time to get to that point, but like just pushing and like making resistant, like that just causes resistance if someone's not ready. Not to say he wasn't ready. Like I'm sure if I would have said something, he would have been fine because he is really receptive. But like, that's not the case for a lot of people. So you have to kind of ease people into it. And in the end, you need to remember that this is your health journey and it is your responsibility, nobody else's. Yes, our partners can affect us tremendously, but you cannot blame them for anything because ultimately they are not forcing you to do anything. You need to take responsibility for the choices that you make, how you choose to react, how you choose to speak, how like if you're prioritizing nutrition and recovery and all those kinds of things, those are your responsibility. At the end of the day, we are only responsible for ourselves and finding support that we need where we can. So if it's not from your partner, maybe it's from a community online or a community in person, whatever that looks like. But you cannot point blame as to why you're not successful on anyone else but yourself. Okay? You need to communicate clearly. You need to be able to take responsibility for those choices. So just like I mentioned before, if you choose to have that glass of wine, that's fine. But take responsibility for that choice and the actions that come, or what's the word I'm looking for? Consequences. I was almost like confessions. That's not right. Consequences. So if you choose to have that glass of wine, I don't care, but you need to take responsibility that I chose to drink that glass of wine. No one else made me do it. And therefore, I need to take responsibility for the consequences that come from drinking that wine, like the scale being up the next few days, my sleep not being as good, potentially having more hot flashes, having some bloating, right? So no one made you do it. You made that choice. You take responsibility for that choice and the consequences that come along with it. Hopefully this was helpful in terms of how to navigate some dynamics in your household to hopefully get your partner more involved. Hopefully some of those like verbiage that I gave you will help you open up some conversation with your partners as well. But remember, this is about you. This is about you, nobody else. So do it for you. Do not point blame at anyone else. Do it for you. Take responsibility for you, your choices, your actions. You're not responsible for how anyone else reacts, how anybody else feels. You can do your best, but in the end, you need to let go of that. Take responsibility for your own self, and you will be astounded at what you can accomplish, how good that feels, and how much growth you will encounter. Please share this with anyone else who is struggling. I hope that this was helpful for you today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.